Okay. Hello, my name is John Michael Foulger. I'm a professional actor. I've been a professional actor for, what time is it now? Over 30 years now. I'm represented by Jen at Mary Liz Management. I'm mainly known for television and stage and the big screen. Stewart.
Hello, I'm Stewart Rome, and I returned to acting about 4 or 5 years ago, just before COVID, which was great timing to come back. But since then, I've been doing lots of short films and interesting independent projects. I'm also represented by the same agency as John. Catherine.
My doorbell just went off. I'm really sorry. Can we pause for 1 second? Sorry, guys, wasn't expecting. Hello, I'm Catherine Adams, and I'm a professional character actor and also have experience in directing and writing scripts. I work in theatre, film, TV, and voice acting, and I really enjoy doing cold reads. I don't enjoy doing intros. So anything else you want to know about me, please have a look at my website, catherineadams.org. And over to you, Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin K. Moffat, and I also don't love intros, so my intro is short. I'm just an actor, writer from the US, and I'm happy to be here. Angela.
And I'm Angela Elliott, and I'm a scriptwriter. Started about 35, 36 years ago with documentaries and drama and film, and I'll write anything anybody pays me to write. So today we're going to be reading something by Anne Morgan. It's called Brian's Birthright. Now we have a feeling that this is possibly meant to be a stage play. So we will proceed on that basis. There's a short synopsis to start with. Brian, a lonely narcissist, uses a dodgy genealogy company to try to prove that he has famous connections, but instead discovers some very distant relations. Fancying a holiday at the seaside where they live, he sets off to meet them. However, boring Brian's behaviour leads to a succession of misfortunes for the family. Expect a farce with touches of dark comedy, which really asks, how much would you put up with? Okay. So Brian's Birthright scene. Brian's living room. It contains a table and chair, a laptop, and a rucksack. Brian enters, opening an envelope.
At last, proof I am related to the Brontes. I always knew I was famous. What? That cannot be. They must be wrong. I know I'm related to them. No relationship. They must have made a mistake. I've been conned by cowboys. Wait. I am a fourth cousin 5 times removed from Ian Fleming. Ah, yes. I've always had a touch of the James Bond about me. That explains my greatness. I've always suspected I was a great literary person as well as a music radio star. I will write my first book, my autobiography. I must tell my followers on social media immediately. They will be so impressed to know I'm even more famous. I bet they'll be shaken and stirred. Ha ha ha! Oh, I have a cousin, 3rd cousin, twice removed, living by the sea. The whole family there. Always fancied a trip down there. Not cheap to live down there, though. So they must be nice people, my sort of people. A nice seaside holiday will be great. I'm sure they will be delighted to meet me. Let me see. Yes, there is a bus route that goes there. I can use my bus pass. Cannot wait to see their faces when they realise they're related to a famous person. They'll probably be shaken and stirred as well. Accommodation. Yes, someone is offering free couch surfing. I can go right now.
Brian exits as Mr. Jenkins enters and stands at the bus stop. Brian enters, goes to bus stop.
Hello.
Mr. Jenkins runs away, exits at the sight of Brian.
There he goes again. Poor Mr. Jenkins next door. Every time I see him, he has to rush off to check he hasn't left the gas on. He should check his memory instead. Must be costing me a fortune in wasted gas. Well, check his memory instead.
The bus arrives containing a heavily disguised Cherry and Arthur separately, plus the bus driver and a bus passenger. Brian boards using his bus pass. Brian sits next to Cherry. Brian simulates talking to Cherry, who is not engaging with him. Bus stops. Brian gets up to let Cherry out. He steps backwards in an over-the-top show of gallantry, knocking Arthur behind him over before getting off the bus. Cherry runs off the bus and exits. There is the sound of a car horn and screeching brakes off stage. Meanwhile, Arthur gets off the bus and exits.
Such a shame she had to rush off. She seemed like such a nice lady, my type, and we were getting on so well. She left whilst I was still telling her about my radio show, and she was going my way. I could have told her all about my other show. I expect she was late for something. Well, it's a small village. We may well bump into each other again, and I gave her my card so we can talk some more. Maybe she'd like to visit my area, and I can show her around. She could stop at mine. I have a bed settee for guests. She can join couch surfers and book with me. I'd give her an excellent reference. Ha ha ha!
Brian exits. Meanwhile, Arthur and Margaret's living room. It contains 2 chairs next to each other and a table and chairs. Arthur enters with a newspaper, goes to his chair and starts to read the newspaper.
Margaret, I'm home. You wouldn't believe what just happened. Some idiot on the bus knocked me over.
Brian enters.
Ah, this is the place. My family home. Looks lovely. My sort of place. They're going to be so happy to meet me.
Margaret enters.
Grief. Are you all right, dear? I wonder who... Sure, I'll get it. You rest.
Hello? I'm your cousin Brian. Surprise!
Well, hello. Welcome. You had better come in. Oh, you are already in. This is... I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Brian, I'm your third cousin twice removed.
Hello. Have we met before?
Arthur awkwardly gets up from the chair. Brian sits in Arthur's chair.
Don't be silly, I've only just arrived. You should check your memory. It's all a bit of a surprise. I only found out myself today. This arrived in the post. Of course, as you're related to me, then that means you're related to Ian Fleming as well. I'm quite famous, you know.
We are... What relationship to Fleming?
Oh, you must be, as you're related to me.
You say you're famous. What field? Literature?
Radio. I have many music shows. I have my very own radio station.
Sounds exciting. How many people work at the station?
Well, actually, it's just me at the moment.
Is it available on FM or DAB?
Internet only at the moment, but I have plans.
Well, I see you've travelled far today, judging by the addresses on the letter. You'll have a cup of tea before you set off.
I would prefer coffee. 4 sugars, heaped, and I'm in no rush. I'm couch surfing in the town for a bit. I couldn't meet my whole family in 5 minutes, could I? I have a bus pass, so I go everywhere for free.
I will go put the kettle on.
Arthur, what a nice view you have from this window. I've always loved a sea view. I could live here quite happily.
Not bloody likely. Yes, we are rather fond of that view.
Oh, yes. The family tree said you had a son. I can't wait to meet him. Where is he?
George. Oh, he's spending the night at his friend's house. Lucky blighter.
Well, he will no doubt be excited to meet his new Uncle Brian. Kids love meeting celebrities. He will be the envy of all his friends, his whole school. That should boost his popularity.
Like I said, he's spending the night at a friend's house for a birthday party. It's a big sleepover.
Oh, he is popular already. Must take after his uncle. That'll be the genes.
Margaret enters with 2 cups.
We are a
Ow.
nice cup of coffee. No, not that one. It's tea. It's for Mother. She is ill in bed. I will take it up to her. I won't be a minute.
Your mother is here? In the house? Why didn't you say? I'll take it up to her. The good news of meeting me will just be the tonic to get her well.
I don't think you should. I think I should introduce you. She is quite frail right now. She isn't allowed.
Nonsense. It'll perk her up no end. Well, who doesn't love a surprise? This way, I assume. No need to show me. I'll find the way. Your cottage isn't that big. I won't get lost.
Well, I guess he didn't want his coffee after all.
Surprise? Shock, more like it. God, I hope her weak heart can stand it, because I'm not sure mine can.
He might hear you. Isn't that bad? He is just harmless and lonely. That's all.
Margaret exits to fetch their cups, enters and sits next to Arthur. Meanwhile,
Harmless? I'm sure that's the guy who knocked me over on the bus. How long did he say he was staying down here? Where did he put that letter? Maybe we can find someone else for boring Brian to annoy.
Well, it was only a little accident. And you're still in one piece. He will be gone in a few days, and we won't see any more of him. Probably.
A few days? I don't think I will survive that long. Are you sure there isn't another family we should be visiting in Australia? What about that holiday we promised ourselves? Let's go right now while he's upstairs. Go on, let's do a runner. Now, quickly, before he comes back down.
Stop it. You're wicked, you are.
Well, that's my tea finished. Should I check your mother is okay?
Stop. He might come down and hear you. He has been up there ages. I think I might go up and get the empty cup. Check everything is okay.
Brian enters and Margaret sits back down. Brian shoves Arthur out the chair and sits in the seat next to Margaret.
What a lovely lady. She was so surprised and delighted to see me. She was speechless. What a lovely, quiet lady, a real listener. A lot like me, really. She dropped off to sleep, so thought I'd better leave her. The excitement of meeting me must have worn her out.
I think I had better get that cup down to wash up.
Washing up with guests in the house? Or should I say family? Don't go, I was just about to tell you about my new radio show. Although I wouldn't say no to a fresh cup of coffee. That other one will be stone cold by now. I can't be doing with cold coffee.
Margaret exits.
4 sugars heaped. So, Arthur, I had this great idea for a new show. You're going to love this. I thought I would
Sound of cup being dropped on the floor above.
get loads of musicians to play on my show live.
Arthur exits.
And then interview them as well. It's completely an original idea, my idea. Of course, others have tried similar stuff, but it won't be like mine. Mine will be far better because... How rude, I was just telling him something important.
Arthur enters, followed by Margaret.
The ambulance. Mother, she's dead.
Arthur grabs his phone and rings 999.
Hello? Ambulance, please. Yes, it's Seacrest Cottage, Little Cliff Lane.
Margaret sits and Brian holds her hand. Arthur exits and re-enters with paramedic. Arthur stands talking to the paramedic.
So you mentioned a weak heart. Did she have any shocks or upsetting news? Anything to traumatize her?
Margaret bursts into tears. Arthur opens his mouth to speak.
Quite the opposite. She's had a wonderful surprise meeting me. We had a lovely chat. We were chatting away quite happily before she dropped off to sleep. Oh, she never touched her tea. Such a waste.
She always drank her tea straight away. She liked it very hot.
Well, if you think of anything else that might be relevant, please let the coroner know. There will be a routine inquest. The funeral director will explain the procedure for you. I'm sorry for your loss. I'll let myself out.
Margaret sobs.
Well, as I was the last one to see her alive, that makes me an important witness. I'd better stick around in case the coroner wants a statement. And I am family, so only proper I stay down for the funeral. It's getting late, and I haven't eaten. I need to eat before I take my tablets. I expect you don't feel much like eating under circumstances. I'll go to the pub. See you in the morning. If you need to talk, Margaret dear, just ring me. I will just put my number in your phone. There, done. I'll see you in the morning, dear. Good night. Good night, Arthur. I'll let myself out.
Did he seriously expect you to cook a meal just after your mother died? Some people. And if he said one more time about your mother being quiet and a good listener, I swear to God, your mother never stopped talking and never slept during the day. She considered it a sin. Why didn't she drink your tea like normal? You probably bored her to death. Oh my God. You don't think he was talking to her after she died and didn't notice, do you? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. But it's what I'm thinking. Let's get you to bed, the rest will help.
Arthur and Margaret exit. After the funeral at the house, Margaret and Brian with rucksack enter. Margaret sits. Brian follows to sit next to her. Arthur walks in.
Well, that's everybody gone now. She had a good send-off.
Are you sure there's nothing else I can do for you? We are family after all, and families need to help each other at times like this.
The funeral. It's been an exhausting day. I think we need an early night. What time is your bus, Brian?
Actually, they run until quite late. Let me get my app out and check. Have you got this app? It's very good. You just tap the bus stop and it shows all the buses that will stop there and what time they're due. It's very clever. It tracks the buses, not the schedule. So I know better when the buses are coming than the other passengers waiting for bus. I can keep them informed. People really appreciate my help. Thanks to me, sometimes people realise it's quicker to walk than wait at the stop. The bus companies should really pay me for my service for their passengers. Of course, sometimes the buses switch off the tracker if they're late, so it looks like the bus is cancelled when it's just running late. But it works really well.
Actually, I think there is one in a few minutes. If you hurry, you should make it.
I see you're not taking the loss well, Arthur. You should have a strong constitution like myself. I can bear these things well. I shall see you tomorrow, Margaret dear.
Hugs Margaret overlong. Margaret looks uncomfortable.
If you need any counselling, ring me. I'm a trained counsellor.
Goes to give Arthur his business card.
What am I thinking? I should check my memory. My number is in Margaret's phone. You can transfer it from there. Saves me a card. I will see you tomorrow, Arthur. Hopefully you'll be less shaken and stirred by then. No need to see me out. I am family after all. Good night.
I thought he would never leave. And he fancies you. Swear to God, if anything happened to me, he would be all over you.
Don't be silly. He was just being kind. He's just socially awkward, that's all.
Mark my words. If anything happens to me,
Arthur, please. One death in the family is quite enough as it is.
And you know what I think about that as well.
He's just lonely and a little lost, that's all. I'm sure underneath he means well.
Yeah, well, why did you go racing upstairs when he was going on about how quiet and such a good listener your mother was? And her sleeping in the day. Not to mention her leaving her tea.
Stop it! I have had enough one day. I am getting a headache. Oh, I think I will have that early night after all.
I'm sorry, darling. I shouldn't have said anything. He just winds me up so much. Oh, I'll get you an aspirin and a nice cup of hot chocolate.
Margaret and Arthur exit. I think we'll call that a day at that point. I know we've got 3 more pages or 4 more pages to go, but it does feel like we have been reading for longer than we would do normally, and possibly need to make it clear that normally we read the first 10 pages of screenplays, and formatted in screenplay format, that's a minute a page. And formatted in play theatre format, which this is loosely, 10 pages is actually quite a lot longer than the same number of pages by screenplay. So that's why we're calling it halt at that point. What's everyone's thoughts on this? Who wants to start off?
I can?
Yep, go for it, Catherine.
So where I started off in theatre, so first of all, well done so far. I think there's definite work to be done. There needs a couple of things doing, but there are some great points as well. First of all, formatting needs a tidy up. It needs a proofread. You've got no scene numbers. You've got a couple of typos grammatically in there. You've also got a couple of moments where there was an instance when I was reading and I didn't realize I was reading again because you'd separated the same character's speech into separate wording for no reason. So the way the eye goes when you're reading something, especially on a script format, when the character's line stops, you assume it's somebody else. So it took me a second to see it was me again. You shouldn't separate one character's speech with their name again. It's because they're still talking. If nobody interrupts them, it's still their dialogue. There was also, I think, a direction written as dialogue. I think somebody said sigh or was supposed to say sigh as it was written, but I don't think it was supposed to be as dialogue. So there's things in there. But I actually found Brian rather interesting. I think depending on performance and direction, he could be incredibly funny. I think there's definitely an interesting character happening there. It may be easier to work with as a TV episodic serial, but I think it could be done on stage. Certain things you need to double check when you're stuck on a stage. I don't know how you're going to get the bus on there. That can be an interesting staging. I think if that's supposed to be all off stage stuff, then you need to write that in again with the formatting. I would be very interested to hear how you thought about getting a bus on stage in between those 2 scenes, though, if you do. You need to give us some character breakdowns. I assumed my character was slightly older and well-spoken because there was very deliberate wording in there. There was no apostrophes, so she said every single word correctly. So I just automatically assumed she might be slightly RP, that sort of well-to-do person. But if not, you need to give character breakdowns. Always give basic character breakdowns, their traits, their ages, where they're from, if they have any accents, that sort of thing. I am very impressed with the speed of the ambulances in this place. instantaneous ambulance after calling them. That was amazing. So might want to think about that. That's something that runs through a lot of what we saw. Your timing is a bit skew-whiff. You might want to actually add something to break the timeline up a bit. Everything happens a bit too quickly. Even though there's a lot of written dialogue there, you need to have a timeline in the storyline, or at least excuses as to why everything happens so quickly. But I think there are some definite funny moments in there. I think the character dialogue could do with a little bit of defining. They start off quite well defined, but they tend to merge into each other dialogue wise after a couple of pages, so be careful with that. But really the main thing was to be very conscious of how you will stage this, if we are correct in thinking it is a stage play, which I believe so. But I did think there were some really funny moments in there. I quite liked Brian. I think he could be hilarious depending on how you play him. There's a couple of different ways you could do him, and he could be rather funny. So I like the idea. It needs a bit of a tidy up, but I'd say definitely keep going.
Brilliant, thank you. Who's up next? John.
Brian, I get, is kind of, from what I picked up, is kind of a cross between Basil Fawlty and Alan Partridge. That's what comes across to me, just in as much as...
I didn't get that, but fair enough.
Well, utterly...
Yeah, I'm saying, depending on how it's played, it could be very...
Yeah.
Alan Partridge is utterly insensitive.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't got a clue what's going on around him, or the world and his place in it. But, like Basil Fawlty, troops on through as if he's in charge. So I kind of got that from Brian. I did see some funny parts in it. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I remembered something else.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't mean to. Sorry, I was thinking out loud. There was one other thing, just very quickly. I wasn't sure if there was a breakage of the fourth wall between Brian and the audience. That needs to be defined, whether he's aside, thinking out loud, or if he's actually breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience. But otherwise, sorry, John, to interrupt.
That's quite all right, because that was going to be my next thing.
Oh, sorry.
So, quite all right. You just got it out the way for me. I'll be honest with you. I think Arthur needs a fecking medal just for putting up with Brian. And whoever the actor whomever the actors are, I think, who end up playing these two characters will need separate dressing rooms. I do see an awful lot of fun in it, an awful lot. As I say, I mean, just to concur with Catherine, you need to get somebody else to read through it, and because there's typos and doing spaces between lines, it doesn't work, because as Catherine says, you read through the paragraph and then you stop because there's a blank, and then you realize, oh, it's my line again. Oh, it's my line again. You can't do that. And the other thing is, every single page, a page represents 1 minute. Some of these pages, you've got 3 or 4 minutes going on one page. So just format and get it proofread. But yeah, I can see it being quite fun.
Okay, thank you. Stewart.
Okay, well, firstly, I should admit that this was a completely cold read. I'd not seen the script before this evening, like most of us, I think. So apologies if I didn't get the reading quite right. And to be honest, I kind of made a note halfway through that to read it, and this is where you kind of need to know the script really well to get the ebbs and flows of it, because when I read it cold, I was kind of stumbling over it a bit, and I wasn't sure if that was the character or because it felt quite hard to read, and that kind of made me question whether the dialogue needs to flow a bit better, or the speeches need to flow a bit better. But that then I thought this chimes in with his kind of uncomfortable social awkwardness, really.
Mm.
So that kind of shoots down my
I thought
my
it was
comment, really.
deliberate, yeah, but it's
You
very
see what I
sort of.
mean? I
Because
was
he's
trying to
quite
work
a
out in my
down,
head whether,
dark, kind of really
yeah,
almost scary, freaky dude, you know.
yeah.
Something.
However, I did find Brian incredibly annoying and infuriating, which is kind of the point. And I think, as Catherine said, this could be incredibly good and funny in this kind of awkward social situation. I mean, the whole thing about letting a complete stranger go upstairs with a cup of tea to an elderly person, I thought, would that happen? Like, would you let a stranger go up? So that then makes it funny, and I think you could make more of that that kind of specific point in that script. But I think everybody said everything that I was going to say, really. So yeah, but well done. And there, other than the little typos, or that thing about size, you said size in the middle of a sentence, and it should be in brackets to indicate an instruction to the actor. Other than that, yeah, it was be interesting to see how this works on stage.
Cool. Thank
Yeah.
you. Erin.
Well, everybody pretty much covered like all the things that I had written down, but also with production notes, setting, and time, that is important as well as the character breakdowns to give everybody more of an idea of like how they interact. Yeah, and I would like to see more about like the explanations of like kind of like if he's not understanding social cues, maybe like more like cues on like body language, which I guess obviously actors can do that, but if this person doesn't have lines, then maybe also in the scene on the bus where he mentions he gives the person the card, but I don't think that's actually in the notes that he does that. So I just maybe like put that in. I'm curious where it's going. I mean, maybe it was intentional not to see the card. I put should we have seen that. And yeah, I think everybody. Oh, I was curious if Margaret and Arthur had a secret, more of a secret, and like where that was going. But I thought that was interesting too, that he just like kind of had he just like went upstairs in the stranger's house. Like that was really, and they were kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's. I thought that was really interesting. I think it's interesting. I'd like to see where it's going. And everything everybody else said were the things that I wrote down too. And I thought it was also could be very, very funny with the right kind of like a very physical comedy. And I'm interested about the fourth wall as well. It was something I wrote down.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm going to echo what everyone said about typos, proofread, etc. You must put a full stop after enter on page 8 because I read that as Margaret and Brian enter Margaret and then realised it's Margaret sits and there's a full stop there. So that it's one of those things where you think this is why punctuation is so important.
Yep.
But yeah, proofread until you can't proofread anymore and get somebody else to proofread it then. And I'm not really sure what format this is supposed to be. I guess it is supposed to be theatre, but you need to really nail that format. Like I think Catherine said, you don't have scene numbers and you've got actually several scenes within one scene. The bus, for instance, I mean, it started me thinking of, staging for things. And even if you're not going to give a lot of information about staging, because hopefully you're going to have a stage director for that, you still got to give them some indication of how you expect this to be pulled off, I do think the bus is a difficult scene, visions of buses rising on the Star Trek. not really sure what the point of Mr. Jenkins is. He doesn't really do anything, does he? It kind of like a throwaway. You spend so little time actually getting to the place that any waiting at the bus stop is sort of like pointless, isn't it, really? I do agree. I echo what everybody said about timing. Seems like everything's happening instantly, and I don't know, you've got to think about that, really. I found it slightly stretched my disbelief, the suspension of my disbelief, to think that he just knocked Arthur over and like seconds later he was walking in through the front door, when he'd obviously done some journey, because he's going to the seaside, which one assumes in the UK, when you say the seaside, is not like 5 minutes down the road. When you say that, you've usually gone quite a distance, because if you live at the seaside, you don't call it like going to the seaside, do you? It's just like where you live.
Down the beach or something.
So I found it that whole kind of thing quite confusing. You need some very clear stage directions. It feels like it's probably a first draft. I don't know whether it is or not, but it feels like it's like you've written it out and just sent it off without really going through to see whether it's cohesive and everything works. I get that Brian is a very annoying character. I get where you're going with him, and I can see some good stuff in there. At the moment, I'm not entirely sure it's very believable, particularly with reference to the going upstairs with a cup of tea, complete straight. And would you really, if someone knocked on your door, would you just let them walk straight in? If they said, I'm your long lost cousin, I'm your second cousin 5 times removed, hello, I think you'd want a little bit more proof, I don't think you'd do that. Yes, John.
There was just one thing I meant to mention. The way, how can I put this? If this is set for the stage, it will be an absolute nightmare to choreograph the sets, because you are jumping between fixed sets so quickly. You've gone his front room, then to the bus stop, then on the bus, all this as it flows. That would be a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And I speak from personal experience because I used to do a lot of set construction. So, but
it would almost be better. I was going to say, it would almost be better if this was like his next door neighbour.
Yeah.
It would be like you could actually then have 2 living rooms in like a terraced house situation, 2 living rooms side by side, and you could work going from one to the other almost. Or even if you did that and there is a distance between them, you could do something very clever with stage directions, etc. Just, to give the impression that you're traveling from one house to the other. I mean, I've seen some lovely,
revolving stages. It can be done, or multimedia, stuff like that. But you have to put that in the script.
But you have to indicate that to get that over. So,
and who's Cherry?
Yeah,
that's another thing.
Anyway,
I'm just rereading it.
It might be important because further on in the script he might be on the bus quite a lot. So perhaps if it's a half revolving stage, that could be done. But you have to put it in the script to give some indication of how they're supposed to, set it.
So,
I like the idea that you just had there, Angela, of it being like 2 houses next door to each other.
Yeah.
Because that would explain also how he could easily walk upstairs with a cup of tea for Mum.
Yeah, you could do that. You could actually have 4 rooms, couldn't you? One above the other. And you could have him go upstairs to the mother, lying in the bed, and and then she conks out and he's like yabbering on, but he's not, obviously, because we've got a conversation. So it's like faded out, as it were.
Well, it's as simple as it has to happen an awful lot quicker. So they're so shocked, the person just comes in there like, what happened?
Yeah.
Rather than I'm talking about it, because then they would be like, no, we don't know you.
Yeah.
But if it just sort of, it just comes in sort of robotic, like, it's like, well, hang on, what's happening? which
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think they were trying to go with, but they've just put way too much time in it. So
And I think also
Doesn't
when
work.
you've got a lot of dialogue going on, that gives a lot of people more time to think. But those who are not speaking, more time to think. And what are they doing? They're just standing there letting him blabber on. You wouldn't be doing that. So I think maybe his dialogue could be tightened up and still get the same message over.
unless
Well, I
he's
mean,
supposed to speak incredibly rapidly, but again, that needs to be
Yeah.
put in the character breakdown.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I mean, we
Anyway.
know he's a narcissist because it says that in the synopsis. So I can imagine him walking straight into somebody's back door. Oh, you're my family. And
But he
everybody else.
feels, do you know what? And this is contentious, I appreciate, but he feels more like he's neurodivergent than
Yes.
than narcissistic.
I could get
He
that.
doesn't seem to be aware. He's more of a Sheldon from that program.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's more of a
He's not
Sheldon
aware
than,
he's being rude. Is sort
yes,
of
than an Alan Partridge. Yes. Anyway,
Good pick up.
yeah,
Podcast.
great to read it.
very
Thank
funny
you.
bits in it though. Very funny bits.
Thank you. Sorry, Erin. Yes, you wanted to say something.
I was just gonna say, I did write, is he supposed to be likable or unlikable? Is he supposed to be a little charming and unaware of himself completely? Or does he have any self-awareness? And I also put, with this, it's really challenging to write a script in Word. Like maybe look into some software programs because that really helps with the formatting. And then read plays. I mean, really look at plays and see what format and which play
Definitely.
like really, because that will really help. It really helps me, So sorry,
No, that's great. Great. Okay, thank you for that.